So, yes, still at the Romford Film Festival. We have just seen Solus on the big screen, and we have director Jonathan Brooks with us now. So how was that?
Always good seeing your work screened in a cinema. Always. Especially when you're working on a modest 27-inch iMac,
Yeah, exactly.
which is always good. But when you see it on the big screen, that's when you see if it holds up or not. And obviously you do some tests on some larger screens ahead of any festival runs, but it's always fun. And it was a good turnout as well, and it's a good festival so far, so enjoying it.
And a film like yours, like Solus, it's the sort of film that absolutely needs to be seen on a massive screen. You know, probably like an IMAX screen. If possible,
Ideally,
yes.
yes.
Because the footage that you've used in this, tell us a little bit about how you got the footage for this.
So I was developing another short film at the time, and this was during lockdown. Like many people, looking at ways to create a film without filming it.
Yeah.
That's when I came across the NASA Public Archive, which not many people are familiar with, bizarrely.
Yeah, you mentioned that in the Q&A, and I was kind of like, well, how does that work? Like,
Yeah.
Can you just dip into NASA archives and just take their footage and sort of use it?
I made sure to read every single every single word several times, but they encourage it. They want you to download it. I think they're giving you a sense of, this is what we've got. It's up for everyone to see. We're not hiding anything apart from the stuff they don't put on there.
Well, yeah, of course.
But it's available to use in short films like this, in other things, even for people that might want to just do research.
Yeah.
And in fact, they have a NASA affiliated film festival called the Cinespace Film Festival.
Nice.
Which is for films made of footage from the archive of 10% or more. Ours was 100%. So we expected it to do well.
Right.
But it didn't, surprisingly. Caught us by surprise, but
I
think it was a bit too dark for them. Not sure about that one. Again, because a lot of the events within the film are based off of real accounts. I'm not saying that has anything to do with the reason they didn't want to screen it. But again, we were using all of their footage, but I get the impression they wanted their selected films to be slightly more inspiring, I think.
Right.
Which is fair.
Exploration kind of.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then here comes Solus, which is, it's pretty dark. But again, it's the positivity of the character, at least throughout.
Yes.
We've had some people say, oh, why, that's not how you would react in a situation like that. And I disagree. He's an astronaut.
Exactly.
He's not going to lose his cool. He's not going to.
On a different level.
Exactly. He's not going to be crying the entire film. He's used to his his own space and working with whatever is presented to him.
So as a director and as a writer, and you did everything on this, like you wore many different hats. But how does it work? Because if you've got the footage but you've not got your story yet, you're working, like, how does it work in manufacturing your story, making your story, writing?
It was bloody complicated.
Yeah, because normally, like, you'll write your story and then you'll go off and you'll shoot it and you'll stick to the script that you've got. But this way, you're like,
it's easy.
it feels like it should be easier, but
Sure.
I can't imagine it is.
No.
I can't imagine it is.
So when I usually tell those that aren't familiar with it being NASA archive footage, and they think when they hear that, oh, that all makes sense. Well, that just explains where the footage came from.
Yeah, of course. Still got to build a story around that.
Try making a narrative out of random clips, and the majority of the clips are just POVs looking out of windows. So it took a lot of time to look through a good majority of at least the footage that we were looking for, because the archive is immense. It's 60 plus years of footage to look through. We barely even touched 1%, but it did take several months to work through all of that footage, really put the computer and the internet speeds to the stress levels, because these were big files. One thing we did have to do is about a third of the film the quality was pretty poor. Even down to resolution, it was about 720p. You know, that what we put out is a 4K film because we wanted it to be in screens like this. So we did have to use some pretty sophisticated AI upscaling programs to make the footage usable for what we needed. It was pretty impressive what this software's actually been able to do, improving the footage, which you would look at straight away and think, well, that's just, we can't use that, it's terrible. And it did get to the point where it's like, well, how are we going to make this usable? Because it's the best shot to make that story work. But in terms of getting started with the story, it wasn't the story first, which is always the case. Right, it was edit first. Put together what we've got, make it into something that kind of makes sense. There are a few drafts of that, and it took the story in different directions. It was more so the ending, if anything. How do you end this? But what we had to do was edit it first, and I wrote it by just adding in captions to see if it would fit. Because another thing with using the footage that you have, you can't make it longer if that's all there is. If it cuts there, that's where it's got to stop. So I can't write a monologue for that character. It's got to be quite short, and it's got to be quite precise. A lot of the terminology that we used in the film is based off of the correct terminology that they're using. The ISS dropping, you know, that is correct, you know, and certain things that, you know, the rations and how long he'd be able to stay on the station for, things like that.
That was one of the things that really grabs me about your short, is that you're clearly, and I hope you don't take this as an insult, but you're clearly a big sci-fi nerd.
Oh, no, that's not because insult.
As you sat there watching it, and as like I like my Star Trek, I like my Star Wars, I love anything sci-fi like that, and you do come out with a lot of stuff like in the writing that you're sort of like, this kid knows what he's talking about. Was it a conscious thing to make it go like that, and just make sure you stuck to like an astronaut would actually say this? Yeah,
I think there are definitely some lines in there. There's a little bit of dramatic, sort of creativity to try and make it a bit more compelling as well. But at the same time, we don't want to take this character down a road that isn't realistic. Because we don't have the footage to back up that tension within his, soul that, you might do if this was so Moon, for example, is a pretty close comparison. And it's a fantastic film, but that's what happens when you have
all
a
the
character,
money in the world.
all the money, and Sam Rockwell.
Well, yes.
So that's there were elements of that. I was like, I wish we could do something like that. And we attempted to do certain things. In an early draft, he was on there for much longer. He was hallucinating. He was, we did some fun bits in the voiceover with doing some David Bowie Rocket Man. It was great, but it just didn't fit. And when we started to strip away those bits and just made it a little bit more realistic, whether or not the events that you see you'd think are realistic or not, they're still based on real accounts from astronauts. So we're not making it up. We're just basing it. We might just be embellishing certain ideas, but that's filmmaking. Exactly.
And then when you add the score, because it's got a beautiful soundtrack to it as well, really elevates everything to the next. Like, you don't necessarily need the monster around the corner because you've got the foreboding music, and you've done a great job with that as well. How did that come around?
The score was so key with this, and he's a London-based composer, Near Perlman, and actually I met him in preparation for this film, and I said, there's a lot of composers interested in this film. Let's see what you've got, and he sent me a piece of about 20 sci-fi films scores that he had recomposed. I think, well, I think that's you're the guy.
Oh, definitely.
So he did an amazing score with this. We used lots of influences. Arrival was one. We wanted that kind of, not a traditional score. We wanted quite abstract sounds as opposed to anything. There was an element of aliens, with one of the opening scores on the opening credits. But that was really important to make the film stand out a little bit more, because we're only working with the footage we've got, so we have to focus on other areas of the production to really enhance the film.
Sort of like your score does the heavy lifting for you.
Exactly right.
No, like I say, like that was one of the things I want to speak to you about as well, because I think the score for this is just like the footage itself is fantastic. Of course it is, you know, but like it's NASA. But the score itself does absolutely just smash this home. Absolutely.
Well, it is on Spotify, so
excellent. There's a cheeky plug for you. Get it downloaded. Would you be interested in turning this into something bigger? I know you can only really work with the footage that's there, but would you be interested in doing that? Like a feature, maybe? Yeah,
now that I've seen how well it's done, a part of me wishes, if I'd spent another 3-6 months on developing it, maybe not necessarily into a feature, because I just don't know how much we could stretch that, but certainly adding more to it.
So more of a long form show?
Possibly. There's always, but I think that with any film I've done, I always want to go back and tinker with it, you know,
of course.
Do a bit of a George Lucas to it, and you know, make little additions to it each time. But it's there now, it's done, and you could develop it further. One thing that's unique about SOLUS is no one's ever done this. No one's ever taken archived NASA footage and constructed it into a narrative short film. So I'm sure there are people that have done maybe some art films or some experimental ones, because to be honest, they're easy to do. You could grab a collection of shots, stick some moody soundtrack on it, and it will look great. It's not hard to do much with this footage, because it's so good. I think you're selling
yourself short a little bit there.
Well, maybe. But it's really, I'm really proud that no one's actually tried it before. I don't think it's because of the complexity of doing it. I just don't think many people are familiar with the archive.
It's something I didn't know anything about. When you mentioned it up on the stage, it was kind of like, that does make a little bit of sense now, but at the same time I was like, how do you get away with that?
Yes, of course.
I suppose if they want you to do it, that's fantastic.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, you know,
that they encourage you to do it. And when you do look into it, you'll be surprised at what you can find. And you know, there are various sites with lots of different things on there, and you can download and watch clips from, you know, the first space flight, you know, to the most recent one.
It's mad. Some
of this footage was, you know, 2018, 2019. Within the film, it's a mixture of different years, but the majority of it, I believe, is about 2011, 2012, those sort of years, because it features one particular astronaut. We had to focus on a character, so we had to get as much from that astronaut and sort of stalk him a little bit to see what is available from this guy, and that's why we had to use some footage and upscale it, because it's the best stuff we can get of him. And there was a lot of it as well. Not so much on the other astronauts.
And have you made contact with him yet?
Trying to. But
I think he'd love that.
I hope so. It's interesting because I saw he's on IMDb. He has a credit in Moonfall, which came out fairly recently, as a consultant.
As a consultant. Did that movie have consultants?
Apparently. Well, he was on it. But I would like to reach out to him. I've tried a few. He's on LinkedIn and Instagram, Twitter, but I believe they're all NASA affiliated, so I'm pretty sure they're not him. So I'm trying to find other ways of reaching out to him, because I'm sure he'll get a bit of a kick out of it by seeing,
there'll be somebody out there who knows him, who sees the shot, and they'll be like, give it a watch. That's it.
Eventually, when it goes online, I'm sure that might happen. But it's because it's on the festival circuit right now. Obviously, the screen is only going out to some people here and there, but it's definitely going to be going online in the future. Once it's done, so there's no need to hide this film.
And before I move on to my last question that I like to ask, what's next for you? What are you doing next? Do you got anything in the pipelines that you're working on? A little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm pretty deep in pre-production for a feature. It's my first feature, actually.
Nice.
So I've been in the industry for about 12 years and developing shorts throughout that, because I'm a commercial film director as well. so finding the time is a little bit tricky. But in the past few years, I've really been focusing on getting out more films, and feature is obviously the next milestone for me. The next film is called Stargazers.
I'm in already.
It's 80s influenced sci-fi adventure film. It's E.T., Goonies, all the greats, as best we can attempt to create our own rendition of that, and taking those 80s influences, not just for nostalgic purposes, but because when you look back at those films, the way that they're shot, how they're made, there's something so sort of fascinating about it. I'm all for new films, of course, but the age of heavily CGI'd films, etc., it gets a little much sometimes.
I was going to say that it's like the magic of, like, you can do whatever you want with the CGI, but you can't beat a practical set.
Absolutely.
You can't beat One-Eyed Willie's ship. You can't beat any of that.
And that's what this is. This is all about practical filmmaking, guerrilla filmmaking as well. You know, that's usually because it's low budget, but sometimes that pushes you to be more creative. When you don't have that huge budget to just say, we'll do it in post, we have to really think about, okay, well, here's the story we've got, but actually, let's take them here instead, because if we go to that location, that's an additional $5,000, you know. So there's certain limitations that we're taking, but keeping it in mind as well. I think that it can still work if you write with that in mind of the budget, and keeping the story more focused. So yeah, we're shooting it all on the south coast, just outside of Brighton, which is where I'm based, and so far so good. We're going through casting at the moment, starting to develop wardrobe props and things like that. It's all going well so far. So yeah, Stargazers, that we'll be shooting in the summer.
Awesome. We'll keep keeping an eye out for that.
Excellent.
The last thing that I like to end on with these kind of Q&As, little questions that I have. You've sat in the cinema today and you've watched it up on a massive, big, awesome screen, and it looked fantastic. Whenever I speak to a filmmaker, they only ever see the bad things in their movies up on the screen. They always say, "Oh, I could have done this better. I could have done that better." What do you see on the screen that you are most proud of
from that film? I'd say the sound really holds up. I'd say it can be easier to get your visuals to hold up on a cinema screen because of just camera technology nowadays. But I feel that people notice a good sound mix more so than anything else, because the cinema is designed for that.
Exactly.
And as you know, we spend a lot of time on the sound design, the score, like I mentioned. So I'd say that's the first thing that I noticed, because it's what introduces you to the film to begin with. Anyway, the visuals, I'm so used to them now. I've almost lost my appreciation of them. So, you know, but
spent months downloading.
That's it. You know, so all the other ones that we didn't, you know, get to use. They're amazing, of course, but they're not mine. You know, there's someone else filmed that and went to much further lengths to get those shots than most filmmakers. But yeah, certainly seeing it today and in other screens is definitely the sound. I think we really did well with that one as well. And yeah, that's down to our composer Nia Perlman and our sound mixer Michael Osborne. So yeah,
awesome. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for, first of all, submitting the movie, letting us having a look at it in the first place, and then obviously letting us show it up on the screen for everyone. Everyone got pretty sure everybody had a blast with it. Can't wait to see what you do next. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on you, and thanks for bringing this to Romford.
Thank you.